say hello to our attendees and welcome to the webcast around managed services. This is a full-on series produced by CA Technologies and our business partner For Profit. The webcast series that we're bringing to you will build on each other, and the series is designed to help you develop and grow your managed service practice. Excuse me. The operator noted the way in which you might present a question. If you do have a question, actually I would prefer that you look at the lower right-hand corner of the WebEx interface and submit your question through that Q&A facility, and we'll make sure to field the question through the course of our session here. So let's get started. Key to the success in managed services is defining a differentiated and compelling service offering, one that stands out as most interesting in the eyes of your prospects. So today, we're going to discuss the critical steps in defining a compelling service offering. My name is Ken. I'm your host for today. I'm a Senior Director of Global Services with CA Nimsoft and a member of our MSP Center of Excellence team. I've been with CA Nimsoft for approximately 9 years and I've been in the IT service management space for about 20 years. Joining me is our expert speaker, Lane Smith. Lane is a business coach on the For-Profit team. Lane is a pioneer in managed services and passionate about helping MSPs grow their business. Prior to For-Profit, Lane served for 11 years as CEO and president of Do IT Smarter, a leading master MSP firm focused on transitioning VARs to MSPs. Lane, say hello, and we'll come back to you in a little bit to talk about your company. Lane, you out there?
Oh, I'm here.
Just say hello to the group, if you will.
Hey, everybody. How are you doing?
All right. We'll get into a rhythm here. Thank you very much. So just a few words about Nimsoft, and then we'll hand over to Lane, talk briefly about For-Profit, and then we'll dive into the meat of the presentation. CA Nimsoft is a pioneer in developing IT service management software. We've been in this business for decades, and our experience and strict focus in IT service management has positioned us to deliver a number of firsts in the industry. For example, we were first to deliver unified monitoring. That's data center and cloud in a single pane of glass. We were first to meter monitoring usage against dynamic cloud usage. First to monitor converged private cloud stacks. First to bring full function IT service management as a SaaS-based solution. First to extend monitoring to data center energy efficiency, and first to deliver a unified service desk and monitoring solution. Here we're showing the CA Nimsoft Unified IT Management Solution. As I said, it's a full function and fully integrated ITIL-based service desk and end-to-end monitoring capabilities. Our solution is enabling high-value service offerings for our hundreds of service provider partners. The broad IT technology coverage shown along the bottom translates very well into a rich service catalog of monitoring services, and the broad range of service desk functions across the top enables managed services operational excellence. Finally, CA Nimsoft has developed a MSP Center of Excellence program, which is a business enablement resource that's included with CA Nimsoft investments. The program is designed to help our MSP business partners grow their business and advance their business. We've pulled together a team of individuals with expertise across managed services business functions. And along the right, you can see the areas where our MSP Center of Excellence team offers assistance to our MSP partners. So at this time, I'd like to, again, bring Lane into the conversation and have him give you a few words about his organization, For-Profit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ken. For-Profit is basically a group of business coaches. All of us have either owned our own businesses in the IT channel or been, VP or director level in a channel-focused business. Our guide is to inspire business leaders to reach their chosen destination. And what we mean by that is, we're going to help you chart your course. A lot of times you start off a business, you build your business, and end up focusing all of your time in the business, building the business, and not enough time on the business and directing where you want to go. So to help with that, we've got a lot of programs. First of which we start off with business assessments, which is where we come in. We take a holistic approach to assessing your entire business and then put together a plan with you and recommendations that are going to help you get to where you want to go within the business. We also offer ongoing business coaching for owners and managers, strategic planning, CEO development. We have business, sales operations, marketing, and now finance peer groups. And, of course, we do speaking engagements, training workshops, much like we've done here with CA Nimsoft. Thanks, Ken.
Okay, thank you, Lane. And we'll come back at the end of the webcast and provide contact information so you know how to connect with for-profit in Lane as well as myself and CA Nimsoft. So now we're going to kick off the webcast topic: how to define a compelling service offering. Key to your success in managed services is defining a differentiated service offering, one that stands out as most interesting in the eyes of the prospect. Here on this slide, you're seeing 7 critical steps to a successful service offering. Today, we're going to discuss the first 5 steps in pretty good detail, and we'll touch lightly on steps 6 and 7 with plans to expand on those particular steps in future webcasts. So, Lane, if you could just talk us through briefly these steps, and then, as I said, we'll dive deeper into each of those first 5 as we go along.
Sure. Yeah, well, Ken, as you mentioned, there's no way we can cover everything in one session here. And in fact, step number 1 there, creating your MSP task force, we spent a bit more time on that than a previous webinar we did titled Becoming a Vendor. So basically what that is identifying the team that's going to help you build your service offering. We'll talk about that a bit here in a moment. Number 2, identifying your opportunities. So what's your market look like? What chance do you have of succeeding if you do bring a managed services offering out? Building your foundation. This is really getting your delivery engine going, right? Once you've got that in place, finding your wow factor, so finding that compelling reason that customers are going to choose your offering versus a competitive offering. And then from that, we get into the details of actually building your offering, and then developing your process, and then finally packaging and presenting the solution and taking it to market. So there you go, Ken. Sorry.
Yeah, let me take it from here if you're okay. So, yep. So Lane, in our last webcast, you mentioned this. It was actually our very first webcast. We have a half a dozen that we're going to be doing live and 6 more that we're going to bring as in an archived format. Again, all of which will build on each other. But you mentioned our last webcast was the topic was how a VAR that wants to become an MSP needs to kind of develop their business around a vendor model, or essentially become a vendor. And in that, we spoke to the importance of developing an MSP task force. This is essentially the team that's going to help the managed service provider practice get off the ground. So can you talk to us about the makeup of this team? I know you spoke about it in the last session, but if you could help us understand the role that this task force plays in defining a compelling service offering.
Sure. Well, first off, this team's going to provide 2 roles. The first role is going to be to help you develop the offering, right? And then once the offering is developed, the second role that they're going to play is they're going to become your support team, the experts that really understand this offering, that are going to help support the rest of your organization as you go out to sell and service your managed services customers, right? So two phases sort of this managed MSP task force. When you look at putting together this task force, you really want to get a cross blend of people throughout the whole organization, from sales to service, marketing. You're going to have to get your finance guys involved, and ultimately your operations team, which is going to help make things run. When you're looking at the members you want to put on this team, you want to really bring your most forward-thinking employees. So when you're looking at sales, you want somebody that understands how to sell services, has a very clear understanding of your value prop versus your vendor's value proposition, has a very clear understanding of your market, So when you ask them what your target market is, they don't answer with 5 employees to 5,000 employees. They know very clearly. Yep, we're focused in the 200 to 700 employee market. The same thing goes to the service side. You want those engineers that are a bit more business savvy, a bit more sales savvy, somebody that can talk to what your customers need and how you're currently providing that need, and which is ultimately going to translate into what this offering is going to look like. And I wanted to touch on what this force is going to do. So I've got a client we're working with right now. We just yesterday I just left our third task force meeting. We've done one each month for the past 3 months. So the first meeting, what we did was we basically brainstormed about actually the next slide here, but identifying the opportunity. What's our core business? What's the market need? What are we best at? That's really what we spent our first session on. The second session, we spent really trying to wrap our heads around exactly what the offerings are going to look like at really a high level. And then this third meeting that we provided, now we've got pricing in place. We've got the offerings detailed out. We're working on our service agreement. We're working on pricing and packaging. And so the next session here in another month is really going to be, okay, here's our offering. How do we take this to market?
Okay, Lane, so the MSP task force that you just described, it's ultimately their job to identify the business opportunity. It's recommended that they would start with analysis around the following 3 areas, and you mentioned this, but here's this graphic diagram that compartmentalizes kind of these 3 core areas of analysis. One is, what is your core business? It's important to understand that. What are you best at? And what, in fact, does the market need? Can you just add a little bit more color around this graphic, and then we'll advance to the next slide that dives a little bit into more detail?
Yeah. If you can jump to the next slide, if you like. So when you take a look at, what are your strengths, right? Actually, let me just back up. Rather than kind of going through these, let me give you a real-world example. So it's likely that you know what you're good at. You're either good at phone systems or Microsoft servers or Cisco networking or whatever that might be. And it's likely that you've got a target market that you go after, whether it's SMB or mid-market, right? So that's what we're really trying to say here is make sure that you focus where you're at. And I'll give you an example of some failures I've seen. I've worked with a client a couple of years back that had spent about 1.5 years building a enterprise-focused print management solution. They decided to develop it in-house. They had a very good opportunity with a couple large customers that they thought was compelling enough to create the offering. Put all this time into it, and 18 months later, they're having no success at all. Well, the problem was that they created this great offering that was focused at the enterprise, and it was around printing, and they forgot to look at who they service, and they serve SMB to mid-market, and their primary focus is infrastructure and voice. So while they created this great offering, they didn't create an offering that aligned with what they do best and who they serve. So ultimately, they put a lot of time and effort and a lot of money into something that was really just doomed from the beginning, right? So that's the message I want you to take home. Build something that's going to align with what you do best and what customers you serve, right?
So, Lane, the slides that follow start to show how you could do some of that analysis to really pinpoint those critical questions, what you do best, what the market wants, et cetera, right?
Right. That's right. Yep. So
let's talk to this slide. Explain how this data came together.
All right. So this is pretty simple. Determine what you're best at. it's likely that you're good at a lot of things. So really what you want to do is you want to identify what you're best at, but also what you have the most depth at as well. So if you've got one guy that's really awesome at wireless, that's probably not what you're best at. You might have a lot of wireless customers that are very happy, but because you don't have the depth, you can't really create a solution around that, right? So my recommendation, and you'll see it through these next few slides, is put some numbers into, create a chart in Excel. It helps to give you this visual, right, of what you're best at, and rate, from 1 to 10, all the different services you provide. Give them a ranking on where you think, how you think you perform from both an expertise, a quality, and a depth perspective. And you'll come up with a visual here, and you can see here in this example that the core skills for this this company here are really around networking and Microsoft servers, right? So if they were going to go to market and you're looking at managed services, we're going to want to focus on something that's Microsoft networking centric and not necessarily desktop or database. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to include those offerings in the future, or you might want to partner with somebody that can provide desktop support. But what we don't want you to do is create a solution that you're not really going to be able to succeed at, right?
All right, great. So let's move on to our next piece of analysis, and that is the who the customers are that this organization may be best serving.
Right. So who are your customers? Unless you have a vertical that is your vertical, which quite honestly I think a very small percentage of the IT channel out there is really 100% focused on a vertical. You're likely going to be fairly horizontally focused. So as you can see here, this bar has definitely got to focus, across a lot of different verticals. That being said, it is often that you'll find that you do have some more expertise in particular verticals. And so this is a good opportunity to say, okay, well, we may not be vertical focused or specific, but we do have, a lot more biotech customers and a lot more healthcare customers than we do any others. So this will be a good gauge to say, okay, well, we know biotech and healthcare both have compliance requirements. So as we start to look at our offering, we might want to put a compliant security spin on it, because that's going to reach the most of our customers. But we're not necessarily going to create an offering that is just for these specific verticals, because that would eliminate too many of our potential customers as well. And then customer size, right? So the final one we like to look at is what are your customer size? And I hear this all the time. What's your sweet spot? Well, it's from 50 to 5,000. We've got, we got the car wash down the street, and we've got 45 sites, globally headquarters out of Germany, company that we provide all their employees for. That's great. That's a great story, but that's not your sweet spot, right? So again, put together a list of all your customers, identify how many employees they have. You might do it by locations or geography, whatever makes the most sense for the way you do your business. At the most simple, simplistic level here, we're just looking at employees, okay? And you can see here, while we do have a handful of sub-50 customers, and we do have a handful of 1,000-seat customers, our sweet spot is really in that 50 to 500 employee mark. And so that's the offering. We're going to create an offering that's going to focus on that particular mark. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. I recall in conversations we've had in the past that it's your recommendation to start smaller in this business size range, and then work your way up. Can you describe your reasoning around that?
Absolutely. So there's a handful of reasons to start small. One is you're at a lot less risk, right? So if you're selling a $2,000 a month solution versus trying to put together a $20,000 a month solution. If you do happen to close that $20,000 a month solution and it's your first customer, it's one of your very first, you're really putting yourself at risk because you don't have your processes in place yet. You might have an offering put together, but you're just getting going. You're still walking, and you've sold a solution that requires you to be running, right? So that's number one. Number two is, as you go up, if you look at, in this example, between 50 and 250, and then between 250 and 500, it's likely that you're selling to a different person. Sub 250, you might be selling to the CFO, you might be selling to the CEO, or IT director. From 250 to 500, it's likely you're selling to an IT director or a CTO, CIO. So even though the value propositions can be fairly similar, because you're selling to different people within the organization, it makes it challenging to get out there and have one prospect where you're talking to the CFO and another prospect where you're talking to the director, and you have a sales force that's not completely comfortable with the solution. So what it does is it really hurts your likelihood of success. Right? As you get good at selling to the smaller one, then by all means go up market, start going after the whales, close that larger business. Right?
Lane, so all the research that we just discussed, the top skills, networking, Microsoft, the customers and the verticals that are top of the list of organizations that the MSP has brought on as clients thus far, the size of those organizations, all this research ultimately determines or will help decide the initial service offering, one that's most compelling for the target market. What we've done here is we've, as you said up front, we've singled out the areas in which play to the MSP's strengths and increases their chance for a successful managed services launch. So from the slides that we've just walked through, can you talk us through this slide that essentially summarizes or provides conclusions on what the service offering should look like?
Sure. So, as we have our core expertise is in, Microsoft servers and networking, that's the offering that we're going to come to market first. So I kind of wanted to step back and think, when somebody thinks managed services, a lot of people think, all right, well, we're going to outsource all of IT, and we're going to provide this full, suite of services. And that's not. While that's true that managed services can be that, managed service can be very, very specific. So it might be that you've just got networking expertise. So your managed offering is going to come out and you're going to be just infrastructure management. Or it might be that you're just desktop. So you come out with a help desk solution. But all of that is, as long as it's something you're good at and you feel that your market is going to embrace that, then that's a great first offering. And so this example here, we've got kind of a Microsoft networking-focused offering, which is going to be their first offering. And it's likely that once we get good at this, we'll start to expand out into other components of the, other pieces of the puzzle, right? As I mentioned here, we're not going to do a specific vertical focus, but because we do have the biotech and healthcare, we're going to be mindful of that when we create the offering. And then when we do go to market, likely that we'll create some, marketing cut sheets and, collateral and maybe even a marketing campaign that's focused at that biotech and healthcare market versus trying to go just across the board horizontally across all of our customers. Because both of these industries have compliance requirements, it makes sense to, maybe put a security and compliance spin on our offering, which ultimately, if you look at what, the Nimsoft RMM tool and their service desk tools provide, they really do provide that foundation for creating a security compliance-focused offering. So you've got a great tool set already in place to handle that. And then as we mentioned, the target market, we're going to go after that smaller one, even though that might not be the most exciting market. And you really want some of those $30,000 a month deals, that's fine. They'll come. Just give it some time. Get good at the small ones first, and you can grow up to the larger plans.
Okay, good. This makes great sense for a service offering, an initial service offering example. I just wanted to point out that, and Lane, you can talk to this, some of the webcast participants may just be getting started in building their managed service practice literally from the ground up, so it's important to acknowledge these underlying service infrastructure that needs to be in place to successfully bring this service offering to end customers. So can you just touch on the fact that these are kind of some requisite foundational pieces, and then how they play into making a service offering effective as in that launch exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got this little training session I did, the top 5 mistakes of the MSPs make, and one of those is, if we sell it, we can. I stumbled there. If we sell it, we can build it, right? And that's a concept. This is pretty standard. If you're used to selling products, you sell a product, you send an engineer out there, and even if the engineer's never seen the product before in their life, it's likely that as long as they're a smart person, they can figure it out, get it installed, and taken care of, and keep that customer happy, right? So that changes when you're selling a service, when you're selling a service that you're delivering. It's not something you can just sell and then figure out later. So it's very, very important that you build out your foundation first. So the foundation's got several levels to it, and as you can see here, we've got them stacked so that they get at the basic of your foundation are your ongoing support processes. What's that going to look like? What happens when you receive an alert from the monitoring platform, or what happens when a customer calls in with a problem? What's that alert triage look like, right? Which ties right into what does your service team look like? What's that service team organization? Building out a managed services focused team is a lot different than building out a professional services team, okay? 2 completely different business models there. So if you've got a professional service team that's going to be your first team, so to speak, that's going to be supporting your managed service offering, you're going to have a lot of pain there and a lot of struggles there. So you're going to have to understand the different role that they're going to have to play as they move to supporting your fixed-fee contract. And, we've got onboarding processes. I mean, the list goes on for building that foundation. These are just a couple. You step up from that. So once you've built sort of that foundation, you've got to put a wrapper around it, right? So your wrapper is typically your SLA, and that is basically telling the outside world how you're going to operate, what you're going to commit to, right? What times you're open, how fast you're going to respond to issues, how you're going to categorize, prioritize problems. Right? You've got to have that defined as well. And then on top, the final piece is your service catalog. And these are the actual offerings that are customer-facing that the customer is going to see. And the idea is you can build out the foundation, you can build out your agreement, set that all in place for just a core support, and then you can layer on additional offerings on top.
Lane, the service catalog contains the service offerings, right? It's a definition of it's a catalog of the defined service offerings. That's correct, right?
That's right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want to jump on, we're kind of jumping ahead there, so.
But the service catalog, the defined service offerings ultimately dictate how the business operates. So once that service is defined, as we've described how to kind of get to that will then dictate how the service delivery organization functions as they will deliver against that defined service, and how support functions they will support the defined service offering as well. And as we talk about on this slide, even marketing and sales will operate against the way in which that service offering is defined.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and if you can see here that our little pyramid, this is really sitting on top of the previous slide, right? So this is sitting on top of your foundation, and these are your different offerings, right? You've got a monitoring offering, maybe you have some NOC services, a service desk, security focus, maybe you have a compliance offering, right? All of these offerings, that's your service catalog, and that service catalog is what your sales force is going to sell, right? So if we step back, though, and remember that, we're putting a foundation, but what foundational pieces does your sales and marketing team need? So if you look from a sales enablement, well, they need a sales process. Selling services is a lot different than selling just a product. And selling managed services, selling your own product is completely different than selling somebody else's product. So you want to create a solution selling focused sales process. Along with that, you're going to have to adjust your compensation plan. You're going to have to build, new proposal templates, new cut sheets. The list goes on. From a marketing perspective, you're no longer going to have your vendors providing you MDF to market their products if the product is yours, right? So you're going to have to put a lot more emphasis on marketing and, building out your collateral and building out marketing campaigns as well. So, building the managed services and hoping that, a sales force can sell it without giving them the proper tools to sell it is another mistake, right? So once you get done with that foundation on the service side, move it on over to the sales force. And if you look back at that MSP task force that we talked about, we've got sales team members on that task force. And part of that is not only to identify the opportunity and help you understand your market, but it's also to get that early sales buy-in. And once you get a couple of your top sales performers, excited about managed services and starting to sell, it's much easier to pull the rest of the sales force along.
Elaine, we've worked through an exercise of defining the service offering based on the strengths of the organization, so that they start in a position of strength. In the launch of their service offering, we've talked about the foundational components that must be in place in order to bring this service offering to market, both from a service delivery, support, marketing, and sales standpoint. However, I think we're at the point now where we really start to talk to the word compelling in this particular webcast, defining a compelling service offering. And we look at this slide here that says, wow, there needs to be something in the service offering that is truly compelling, that's a standout, that helps the service become a differentiated one in the face of competition. Help us understand. Give us your definition of wow and the role it plays in this defining the service offering.
Right. Let's skip ahead there, Ken. When you're looking at wow, it's really something that your competitors aren't doing yet, right? We've got this great animation here. It's something that when you look at managed services as a whole, it's a pretty mature market at this point. So there's not a lot of wow factor yet. But fortunately, we are in the technology world, so there's always going to be that wow. And I've got an analogy here. I'm from Southern California, so I've surfed my whole life. And when you're out there surfing, there's always what's expected. So if it's the waves are a couple feet big, it's expected that you're going to catch a couple waves and that are 2 to 3 feet in size, and you're going to get the occasional 4-foot one that's going to come in. That's exciting. But it's not going to make your day. And then there's the wow factor. There's that big set that comes in. It's, the overhead set that comes in. And they only happen all the time. But, boy, when they do, you're really excited. So that's that wow factor. Now, the challenge is the wow factor gets diminished over time. So in Southern California, the waves are bigger in the winter, right? So as the winter comes and the waves are consistently bigger, rather than that 6-foot wave being the wow factor, it's going to be that 8-foot wave that's going to be the wow factor. So the lesson there is that once you've created it, you're always going to have to keep moving, and that'll take us to that next slide here, which we kind of want to take a look at, an example of wow at the beginning of managed service. Okay?
And Lane, before you talk to this slide, the three levels that you just described, the expected level, the exciting level, and the wow level. At the expected level, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is if you kind of tie that back to actual business opportunity and business profits and revenue potential, that expected level is really more of the commodity level, where there's a lot of pricing pressure and small margins, right?
Absolutely.
And the business return is expected to be much larger if you can deliver a service offering that actually has some real wow in it.
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll talk to this here in a second, but we were just looking at offsite data backup yesterday, and with a client, and that's something that when we started selling offsite data backup, I don't remember what year that was, but it was quite some time ago. We were charging $15 a gig for offsite backup. And, can you imagine that? Right now, what is it? I don't know, 30, 40 cents a gig for offsite backup? And that's in, less than 10 years, or less than probably 6 or 7 years for that matter, right? So
right.
The example we have here is, circa 2002 or prior to, managed services at the core of managed services was, monitoring your customer servers for availability, right? And, something that was expected but not really part of the core was really starting to add that proactive component, trending and performance analysis and reporting. But the wow factor at the time, and actually when I started my business in 99, this really was a wow factor. The wow factor of being able to, establish a remote, VPN tunnel to the customer's network and remotely monitor their networks without having to install, a server out there on their site to monitor it. And even more wow was the ability to take remote control of these servers and desktops from that central location. And I remember when, the first time we did that, even us as engineers were just like, oh, my God, this is unbelievable, right? Well, if you look at today, can you imagine being excited about that? It's been a core part of, the Microsoft operating system for, years at this point. There's nothing wow about that anymore, but it certainly was a very compelling reason to go with an MSP 10 years ago. If we take a look at today, all of that wow is pulled into the core offering, right? You're monitoring the customers, a trending and performance analysis, that proactive component, right? Obviously, that remote control, remote monitoring, that's part of the core. The expected side, database, application monitoring, cloud monitoring. It's about, maybe 12, 18 months ago, maybe as far back as 24 months ago. There was no such thing as cloud monitoring, the idea of monitoring a hosted Exchange server. None of the RMM providers had it out there. So it was very exciting. Right now, it's still exciting, but it's becoming more and more expected. That's just part of your core set. What's getting the wow factor now? Real-time end-user experience monitoring, net flow analysis, more high-end, more consumer or endpoint-focused monitoring is your wow factor at this point. And obviously there's a whole list of other wow factors right now, but these are just a couple of examples.
So we've built up to determine what the high-level service offering is going to be. The next step here is to take your service offering and build it into an itemized list of committed deliverables. So this is over to you, Lane.
Right, absolutely. So we a while back we identified we're going to do a Microsoft-focused offering, all right? Well, it's one thing to say, okay, we're going to provide monitoring and management on Microsoft servers. That's great. But what all is included in that? And the reason why you want to go here is a couple of reasons. One, you need to understand all the different line items of what's included from a process creation perspective, from a value proposition to the customer. This is what we do versus our competition. You're also going to need to understand this from a costing and pricing structure. So at the high level here, open up an Excel spreadsheet. At the top, Microsoft networking, start listing what you can do, right? You can start with the capabilities of your Nimsoft monitoring package, right? List out all those. Do you want to include it? Do you not want to include it? Start to build that list, okay? Highlight your wow factors here. So you've got an end user experience monitoring, a wow factor, right? And system restores, but might be a wow factor as well. Excuse me. So build out the list of your services. Step one, right? Step two is our next slide. Step two is to really start to determine your cost structure. Okay, and I've seen a lot of people make this mistake. It's it costs us $5 a month for licensing for Nimsoft for basic monitoring. I think it's $35, $40 for advanced monitoring, right? And we take that cost, multiply it times 2. That's our retail price. Right? I've seen that time and time again in the market. But what happens there is you haven't factored in any of your additional costs. So as you can see here, we've got licensing costs, we've got service delivery costs, okay, and then we've got infrastructure costs, right? So unless you're providing a fully hosted solution or you're buying a hosted solution from the provider, you're going to have some infrastructure costs. What's it cost to build your servers out? What's it cost for your colo facility? How about your bandwidth? What does that infrastructure cost look like? When you look at your service delivery costs, it's one thing to monitor devices, but what are you going to do when you receive alerts? You've got to create tickets. You're going to do some troubleshooting. You're going to do triage, whatever it might be. There's a cost associated with all of this. So, and I know what you're thinking right now. How do we know what these costs are if we have no idea what they are because we've never done this? You're right. It's likely, though, that you've got a knowledgeable staff there that are going to help you create some estimated costs on what you're going to do. And then also, you're going to tie that into, the service you're offering. So as an example, if you say, okay, well, we're going to provide remote troubleshooting for any issue that we identify on the customer's network. You might put a time limit to that. Say, okay, well, we're going to troubleshoot remotely for up to 30 minutes. And so you know what your hourly costs are, and you know how long, obviously, 30 minutes are. And you can estimate, okay, well, looking at our existing customer base, how many server failures have we responded to? And you'll get a good idea how often these systems are failing. And you'll be able to estimate, okay, well, we think it's going to be this much cost for troubleshooting per device. Put that in here. And ultimately what you'll do is you'll build up a list here of all your costs, which is going to give you a foundation for creating your base cost structure, which is that first step in understanding your pricing. All right.
Clay, why don't you keep us going here? There's a couple of other critical aspects to launching the compelling service offering, one of which is just to make sure that you're very aware of all the processes that are involved.
Yep. Okay, so process. Because you're not selling somebody else's service, and because you're not selling a one-off, go out there and install something, it's really, really going to be important to create process. I've heard people talk about managed service a lot and say, I've heard this statement many times, managed service is about people, process, tools. And I'll tell you what, the only thing of those three things you can't replace are the process, right? But, you can replace them, but it's very difficult, right? People come and go, tools come and go. Process or build a foundation, and that's what's going to provide not only the value to your organization, but your ability to succeed as an MSP. So I've got a handful of processes listed here just to get you started on what you should be looking at in no specific order here. Sales process, very important to start to understand what your solution selling process is going to look like. Customer onboarding and incident creation, escalation process, and change management. Those are your top three. Those are the first three processes you've got to create within your services organization. Followed closely by knowledge management. This is really where once you've got that onboarding process in, you're going to pull a lot of information in from your customers so that you don't have any of that, sort of just, well, John's the only person that knows about that client, or Carrie's the only person that knows about this client. You've got an onboarding process that pulls all that information into a central database, and that's really your knowledge management process. And then you also need billing processes. And the reason why I put billing processes here is because I wanted to take a moment to talk to you about when you're creating your offering, it's very important that you keep your billing in mind. So if you're creating an offering that, includes on-site coverage or includes troubleshooting, maybe during business hours, but doesn't include it after business hours, or you're creating an offering that requires a true-up of licensing counts every month, it's very important to think about, well, one, can we actually track that from a billing perspective? Does our PSA tool allow us to differentiate between, business hours or after business hours? Do we have an automated way to notify accounting when the license counts go up or go down? And if you don't have good questions or good answers to those questions, then it's going to be important to think about, making sure you create an offering that's not going to create an undue burden on your financial department. Because as you look at all of your costs as a whole, you've got service delivery costs, but you also have your administration costs, and it's key to build a solution that has as little admin costs as possible, so that you can truly get the profitability that you want to be at.
So, Lane, now that we have our service definition and a sense of pricing that's based on having a baseline of cost of running business, how important is the packaging of the service offering and the presentation of the solution in order to compel the buyer?
It's absolutely very, very important, right? In fact, I've seen clients that have built out a fantastic, service delivery engine, a fantastic network operations center. Had one opportunity, sold that into that opportunity once because the customer was asking for it, and then have had no success at all being able to take it to market to the rest of the customers. And the challenge is they create an offering for a specific customer and sold it, but never put a wrapper around the offering so that the rest of the sales force could really wrap their head around. So there's no price list. There's no clear value proposition. There's no proposals or presentations or anything. Without all of that, your sales force is just going to be really shooting in the dark. You really have to create a package around that service so your sales force can look at it, they can feel it, they can touch it, they know exactly what they're selling and how they're going to sell it to their customers.
Lane, this is great. So we're near the end. Actually, we've reached the end. However, this is the end of our discussion around defining a compelling service offering. It's certainly not the end in the way in which a service organization, managed service organization, it continues to define service offerings to stay ahead of the curve. Can you talk to us about the importance of continuing to wow, and maybe we could play into your experience of surfing again?
That's all right. Well, really, like I use the example of cloud monitoring, right? Like I said, it wasn't that long ago where all the RMM providers were, putting out press releases that they could monitor, Office 365 or whatever that might be, and that was a wow factor a year ago, and nowadays it's expected. So once you create your offering, you're not done, right? Keep that MSP task force engaged. Keep them constantly looking at the market, constantly getting that customer feedback, finding out what your customers are wanting, and continue to increase your wow factor, continue to add wow factor to your offerings so that you don't become, a should have been or has been or could have been, right?
So, Lane, thank you very much. Today's discussion really serves as a best practice guide to provide our webcast participants with an overview of what goes into defining a compelling service offering. But today's discussion may just be the start to the development of a service offering for you. And CA Nimsoft, in for-profit, and Lane can continue to provide guidance and assist you through the process. If you'd like to engage further with us to help you, you can reach Lane and his organization For-Profit through Twitter, LinkedIn, email, and to contact Nimsoft. You can see listed on this slide are the various channels that are best to connect with us. Both For-Profit and CA Nimsoft have additional enablement resources and tools, so this webcast is just a small piece of the pool of resources, educational resources that we bring to you. You can access the CA Nimsoft MSP playbook through the MSP Zone, the Nimsoft MSP Zone, which is www.mspzone.com. There you can find archived webcasts. You'll find the webcast that Lane and I did previously about becoming a vendor, and you'll find this webcast in its archived form as a replay. You'll find white papers that CA and For-Profit have co-written, a number of sales and marketing collateral to help launch your business, strategy briefs, and much more. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's webcast on defining a compelling service offering. I'd like to thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to your participation in future CA Nimsoft and For-Profit webcasts. Thank you very much.